Poetry Center, bringing poetry to Paterson since 1980 at Passaic County Community College.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. We really appreciate the support. We would love if you continue to support the foundation. We survive on voluntary contributions. And thanks to the wonderful readers. Edwin, congratulations again. Congratulations to everybody. It was really enjoyable getting to hear the poems. And I did feel, as Ken said, like my mother was sort of swirling around in the room. So thank you. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, New York Quarterly. Please buy some books. Enjoy the rest of the food. Thanks.
Since I was 6 years old, I've been writing, but obviously, when I was 6, I knew I had to write the way some kids have to sing and others do art. This was something that I seemed to have to do. I can't remember a time when I didn't like doing it. So I guess the first time, as I said, I remember writing was when I was 6 years old, and my friend's mother had died, and my mother told me, and my friend was across the street playing with her brother, and I thought, doesn't she know how her life is going to change? And I just picked up a twig and started to write something in the red dirt of Perth Amboy in my front yard. Family promises. When I was 16, my mother made me promise not to tell my father he was dying of pancreatic cancer. She made me promise not to tell my 13-year-old brother. She asked me to care for my father while she was teaching, since I was home by 12:30 from my double session high school, while she didn't get home from public school 11 until after 4. My father had a naturally sweet disposition, and I learned how pain could change even the sunniest of natures. I learned to lie that fall. I lied to my father, who wanted to believe he'd recover from painful pancreatitis. I lied to my brother. I learned to lie by omission. I smiled and lied to my best friend, my teachers, my friends on the school paper when they asked me if I were all right. I even lied to my mother and told her I was not depressed, as she managed to teach and do lesson plans and spend nights with my father as the tiny black and white TV droned on, mostly Yankee games that he couldn't focus on, as we all waited for the nurse who lived next door to arrive with a morphine shot prescribed by her husband, a resident at Memorial Hospital in Manhattan. After my father died, my mother spiraled into depression, though she continued to teach. My brother turned atheist. I learned to keep smiling and lying, and for years saying I was fine no matter what random disaster plummeted toward me and those I loved. I was actually born in New York, but my mother was from Brooklyn and didn't trust New Jersey doctors, so I was born in Brooklyn, but I always lived in New Jersey. Oh, I guess I must have been home after a week in the hospital, but I spent summers at my grandmother's in Brooklyn. And I had a companion that lived in New York City, and I was with him for 23 years, so I obviously spent sometimes 4 nights a week in the city, sometimes summer vacations in the city. I think for me, poems are based on some strong feeling that one has, and that's a catalyst for writing, and those feelings can be love or loss. As Emily Dickinson said, most poems, and I'm paraphrasing, are about love or loss. And love, it could be love of one's romantic love, or love of one's freedom, or love of a family member, or it could be in loss, of course, death, but it could be loss again of one's freedom, of one's beliefs, of one's youth. So you can take it all the way to the end of the street, so to speak. I think like Yeats, he wrote romantic poems when he was young, and he wrote political poems, And then at the end, he was writing about mortality. And I think I'm writing a lot about what it is like to be older in our community. This is a title poem from my latest book, The Best Lover, that was published by New York Quarterly, and it's called The Best Lover. I tell every man I'm with that he is the best lover I've ever had. He always believes me. I feel if he asks me, then that's the only answer he wants to hear. And sometimes and somehow at that moment after lovemaking, I almost believe it myself. Maybe it's not so different from when someone asks you, which of your books do you think is your best? And you almost always answer, it's my most recent. Well, I think that as most poets, I'm very alert to whatever is going on around me, so I'm cognizant of some of the unfairness. I think a lot of my poems are about unfairness. Unfairness in love, unfairness in our community, unfairness politically. So when you just look at the headlines, some of the things about immigrants or just unfairness in your own town, or you see how even someone has been betrayed in love, I get a lot of my ideas, or how so many of my friends in my generation are spending their time not at poetry readings but at doctor's offices. I find that I get my inspiration from things like that and from conversations.
Do you have another poem you can share with us?
I have one poem I really would like to share. So when my long-term companion of 23 years died, after 2 years of grieving, I went on the internet and I decided I would try and meet someone else, because I'm a great believer that one needs love in one's life. And this is called What I Don't Believe. What I don't believe is that at my age, on JDate, that men that send me an email will be good-looking. The most you can say is, I can see they were once good-looking. That most of the photos are from 10 years ago, and when you finally meet a man for coffee or brunch, or possibly if they have a more generous bent for dinner, they will not look like their photos, but more wrinkled, more bald, grayer. Most of the men 5'6" will be more like 5'3" and only contact women 5'2" and under. Most of the women will lie about their weight. 140 states 124. How old is your photo? My new date asks. I don't want to tell him it's 25 years old. The middle one is more recent, I say. I don't say it's a decade old and was flattering even then. During dinner, a man will leave for the men's room often, at least twice. Almost all the men have prostate issues, though they don't mention it. My date asks me, do you get a mammogram every year? He has his own fears about a woman's health. Do you have any health problems? I'm asked. No, I say, and often don't mention a health scare I had 12 years ago, though sometimes I do. On the first JDate at coffee, how much do you weigh? My date asks me. How much money do you have? He asks. How long has it been since you've had sex? Why did you get divorced? He continues. Who left whom? How much do you weigh? I can tell immediately when it won't be. Sometimes if I'm neutral, then I give it a little more time, but I always know when it won't be, instinctively or intuitively. Mm-hmm. And I did meet my new husband on JDate. So I give hope to all my female and male single friends that it's never too late to find love.
Yes, she would always write to us every single birthday, every single holiday, whether it was Halloween or Christmas, even though she was Jewish. And I remember I would go to sleepaway camp ever since I was from ages like 9 to 14, and every single day she'd write to me and send me newspaper clippings and some works of her poetry. And I remember always getting the most mail from her out of anyone else in my bunk, and she was just so caring. And it's incredible to see all the people she inspired and who inspired her.
Laura was my my mentor from the time I was 16. She was a Dodge poet in the schools and came into my junior year creative writing class to read and to teach. And I brought her a poem afterwards, and she published it and asked me to intern for Lips, and I did. And we were incredibly close the rest of her life. And she was a mentor to me, not only with individual poems or writing or my career, but also just as an example of somebody who in middle age became a poet and an artist and really changed her life in middle age. And I found that so inspiring, and it's actually enabled me to do the same thing in my own life, and I miss her.
I still remember going to England to read with Laura, and we shared a hotel room, and she would go out in the afternoon, go shopping, and I would take a nap, and then she would come back, and we had a most wonderful time. She loved shopping more than anything else, and we traveled to a lot of places together, Paris, Wales, England, Italy, Sicily. It was really wonderful. I miss her when I travel. Just not the same without her, I have to say. And we always had a good time. We always laughed a lot. And she didn't mind it if I took a nap in the afternoon. I didn't want to go shopping. I hate shopping. Anyway, I'm glad to have had this program today. She deserved it, and it's wonderful, and it's really good for her to have it.
Laura and Maria are kind of like, they were kind of like a second mom for me. And I think Maria, I can't even remember whether it was Maria or Laura who were my first workshop poetry leaders, because they're so intertwined with each other. And I really miss them, Laura, so much.
Today is a very wonderful day to celebrate the memory of Laura and to keep poetry alive in northern New Jersey.
She used to say that she was always very honest in her poetry, but the rest of the time she was always just nice to people. And I think the thing that's amazing is I didn't realize how much of a contribution she made to so many people, and so many people have come up to me today and told me that, and it just meant a lot, and it's been a really amazing event, and I'm really glad we could do it. Thanks.
Well, after I get over my initial nervousness, I feel pretty good up there, and I like what I heard from everybody else.
It is such a joy to celebrate Laura and to feel her presence here and to share our connections. We're connected through poetry and through our love of Laura in invisible and visible ways.
What a wonderful day. People talking about Laura, writing poems in the style of Laura, people reflecting on how Laura and the foundation are continuing her work, and I hope that videos and readings will continue Laura's spirit throughout the poetry world and the entire world.
One thing I really remember about Laura is her kindness. She was kind, so kind to me, but kind to everybody. And I really just had the most wonderful afternoon today, and I did feel she was present with us. So,
well, it was a fantastic poetry reading, and one of the things I really enjoyed about it was thinking about what a narrative poem is. I know the bottom line is that you tell a story, but everyone tells the story in their own way. So it kind of got me thinking about, that subject too, as well as enjoying everybody's poems.
It was a special thrill and a special honor to be part of this really poetry celebration, and even more importantly, a celebration of Laura's life, who meant so much to so many of us who love poetry. As it turns out, Laura and I grew up in the same town together, although we didn't realize that until many years later. So we have a long connection. I loved her poetry, I loved her. To be part of all of this, honoring her is a great honor and a great pleasure and a great blessing.